guys, and welcome back to my channel. The case that I'm going to be looking into today is the case of Tricia Todd. Now, she was a 33-year-old mother of a beautiful little girl called Faith, and one day she went missing and her family had no idea what happened to her. If you guys have any suggestions that you'd like me to look into, then please do let me know and I'll look into them for you. I'd just like to let you know that I mean no disrespect whatsoever about anyone that I talk about today. I've just got this information from the internet and compiled it into a video for educational purposes. So Tricia Todd was a 33-year-old woman, as I've stated. She had a 2-year-old little girl called Faith with her now ex-husband Stephen. Her and Stephen had been kind of childhood sweethearts. So they went to, I believe, like elementary school together. They knew each other pretty much most of their life. Now, Tricia was part of a big family. Her father was called David and she had 7 brothers. So there was 8 of them all together. She had 7 brothers, which is a huge family. And she was close with all the family. She was said to be like the life of the party. She was so outgoing and she just absolutely loved life. She was especially close with one of her brothers called Jonathan, and they were kind of like best friends growing up and things like that. So going back to Stephen, as I said, even Jonathan grew up with him. So it was Tricia, Jonathan, Stephen, they all went to like the same school. He was, you know, like an honor student in a sense. He was always on the honor roll. He always got good grades. And they actually went and worked in the military air force. And then that is when the pair first got together. So they decided that they were more than just friends. And so they wanted to test out the waters. And they got together there. Their marriage seemingly was brilliant, you know. Stephen really loved her. They loved each other. They had a really, really good marriage. But after 11 years of being together, they decided that they were going to split up. So they divorced and it was amicable by all accounts, you know. Tricia's father, David, said that he was really proud of her, how well it went. Once they divorced, she left the base and she moved to Hope Sound in Florida. And she kind of went to live with her brother. I do believe she had her own place too, but I guess she just spent a lot of time there. She had a little girl. So Tricia had full custody of Faith, but Stephen could see them whenever, you know, he wanted to. Like I said, it was totally amicable. They were both seemingly really on the same page about it all. Faith was actually a registered nurse and she worked in hospice, and so she even told him that she didn't want alimony off him because she didn't need it. She was a nurse, she could afford it all, she didn't need it. So she wasn't, you know, pushing for everything she got. It was just like a really good ending to their marriage. Tricia was just such a vibrant woman and she was such an amazing mother to Faith. She absolutely adored her little girl. She did everything for her.
How are you?
Bye-bye.
Say love you.
And then again, she was also like the life of the party. So you can just kind of tell like how bubbly and outgoing and, you know, how fun to be around she was. She was just a lovely woman. So I believe around 3 months after they actually got divorced, Stephen decides that he's gonna come down and visit Faith for a week. So he books into a B&B on the 26th of April in 2016. You know, they spent the day together. And then her family became worried when she never turned up for work like the next day. They speak to Jonathan, who obviously, as I said, she spent a lot of time with. He said that she'd been missing all day, didn't know where she was. So they go to her house. They're trying to find her, obviously. It's unlike her to not turn up to work, to not speak to anyone, for no one to know where she was. They go to her house and her lights were still on. Her car was parked outside of her house, so obviously it wasn't, you know, she hadn't taken that out, it was there. Apparently she used to park in a certain spot, like many people do. Many people park in a specific spot, you know, and they always tend to park there. We're creatures of habit and, you know, often we do that. So that is what she did. She always parked in a certain spot, but her car was in a different spot this time, which was a little bit odd, but you know, there could be obviously explanations behind that. So they didn't worry too much about that. But they also found her purse in her car and she was nowhere to be found. So she's obviously not gone out to get something, you know, to go and grab something money-wise because her purse was in the car, which was, again, very strange. So the family decide to contact the police and obviously they go and speak to Stephen as well. And he tells them that he's supposed to be spending the time with his daughter, isn't he? So He says that Faith was feeling unwell one day, and so he asked Tricia to come over, so she did. And then Faith falls asleep, and then Tricia leaves, and that was the last he saw of her. He was very cooperative, he was very concerned, worried about her, and nobody really thought much of that. Stephen wasn't initially a suspect in this case. So police begin looking into it. Obviously, they eventually do find some footage of Tricia at a grocery store doing a bit of shopping, and when they went and searched the home, they found these groceries inside the home. So she had obviously been home after she had done that shopping, and that was on the 26th of April. So as I said, Stephen was really, really partaking in the investigation. He was being as helpful as he can. People, said he was like this outstanding citizen. He was a really nice guy, and they had a really good marriage, and so he was just helping in whatever way he could. He told them that Tricia was, yes, okay, as I said, she was there, but she left. She was supposed to pick up Faith in the morning, and when she didn't, he just left his daughter with the babysitter because he had to go to work. So off he went, and he left his daughter with the babysitter, and that's the last he knew, pretty much. He agreed to do a polygraph test, which he didn't fail. The police really didn't think that he was a suspect in the case whatsoever, and so they began looking elsewhere because they found out that Tricia had met this new man when she moved to Hope Sound, and so they tried to look into him to see whether he was a potential suspect instead. Also, a thing that came up when they spoke to Stephen was that Tricia would a lot of the time go out walking on her own because that was how she connected with God, and she would just go for these walks all the time, something which her family corroborated. They said that was something she did, it was normal for her. So I guess they're thinking along the lines that maybe she went missing when she went on one of these walks because she was alone, and maybe somebody had taken her. They found out that she would like to walk along the beach on her own and, just enjoy her own company, connect with God, and go out and clear her head. There was a man that actually saw her on the beach and spoke to her, and he became a suspect in the case, but he was quickly cleared because they actually had the CCTV of the night that they thought she'd gone missing. He was sat on the beach all night and he was watching turtles lay eggs, so he was ruled out as a suspect. Police were doing everything they could. They combed through Tricia's phone record and they found this journal. So they began looking through that to see whether that had any information whatsoever that they could use, to help them in their investigation. They eventually found the identity of this man, who she was dating, who she was seeing. They looked into him as a suspect, but he was quickly ruled out. They followed him literally everywhere. They were hoping pretty much that if they followed him for long enough that Tricia would appear, or he would lead them to her if he was involved, or something like that. But she never did, and they very quickly ruled him out. They spoke to him several times, and he wasn't a suspect in her case either. So they keep on ruling out these people, but they're just not really having many suspects in it. So, but they continue to look into a journal, and that is when they found something that Tricia had wrote that put a bit of suspicion on their marriage. So Stephen may not have been the great and fantastic guy that everybody thought that he was, that his family, that Tricia's family thought that he was, that the police thought he was. He was so helpful and he was cooperating with the police completely, and so they didn't suspect him at all until they found what she had written. So she kind of was helping her own investigation. They found information that he had actually abused Tricia, and not only that, he had abused several of her animals over the years, and on even killed them. And on one occasion, I believe, while she was actually there, and she absolutely adored her animal, so I can't even imagine how horrific that must have been. But he was playing a good part. He was super innocent, and the police believed him until they found this. And this information was from Tricia's own words, which obviously she wasn't around to tell anyone. So it just shed a whole new light on this case. Even after finding that, they didn't believe that he was still involved at this moment. And then they received a tip from a man that had actually seen Stephen driving Tricia's car that night. So he had seen him behind the wheel of her car. Something which Stephen didn't ever tell the police. So yeah, that was very suspicious. That was when they found footage that was, pretty damning. They found that he had been driving Tricia's car that night as well as his own. He was caught on these other CCTV cameras, and They also found a camera that was kind of overlooking Tricia's house, where they found a male who they believed to be black, who was lurking around in the shadows, running around in the shadows with this huge army rucksack. They then got all this evidence and intuition, and they took it straight to Stephen, and they confronted him with all of these facts that they'd found. This was when Stephen's story began to change, and the police started to suspect that they were no longer looking for a missing Tricia, but for her body instead, and that she had most likely been murdered. And then, presented with all these facts, Stephen's story changed again, and he basically blurted out that he had accidentally killed her, that they had gotten into some sort of argument, Tricia had fell and had hit her head, and she died as a result of that. He panicked, he didn't know what to do, and so he disposed of her body, which, you know, totally innocent that people do that. Like, it was all an accident. You don't ring the police, you don't ring an ambulance, you just get rid of the body. Yeah, okay, that's totally what should happen. The police didn't believe him. I don't think anyone did. And so they charged Stephen with Tricia's murder. So for 5 weeks, they looked for her body. As I said, they now knew that she was murdered. And so, well, he said it was an accident, but nobody believed that. So they're looking for her body, but they're not really having much success. And at this point, they just really want to bring her home so that she can be buried, and so they decide to offer Stephen a plea deal. So in exchange for receiving a full confession, you know, detailing exactly what he did to Tricia and pointing to where her body was, he would get 35 years in jail. And he agreed, you know, he knew he was going down, so that was the best option for him. It got him out of being on death row, so yeah, why wouldn't he? So he agreed to that. And that is when he finally told everyone what actually happened to Tricia. He told the police that on the 26th of April in 2016, as I said, he spent the whole day with Tricia and Faith. But unbeknown to her, his plan all along was not to spend the day with his little girl and, you know, the mother of his daughter, who they'd been married to for so long, who they knew from being kids. They'd grown up together. You know, it wasn't to spend the day with them. It was to murder her. Yes, murder her. I don't get it. Why? All the time he's there, he's trying to gather the courage that he needs to kill her. And that was the entire focus of his visit. He wasn't coming to see his little 2-year-old girl. He was coming to kill her mother. At some point she left, but then she came back. As I said, he lured her back in, I believe probably by saying that Faith was poorly. And then he killed her. It's believed that he actually strangled her, and then once she was dead, he dismembered her. So he came prepared. He brought a chainsaw with him. He brought acid with him. He brought the acid down from where the army base was. So he was just carting all that stuff down there because, as I've already said, he already had it planned. He knew what he was going to do. He, you know, put her in a bin bag, put her in the car. He then drove her out to the Hungry Land Wildlife Reserve, where he put her dismembered parts into this plastic tub, which he filled with acid, and then he buried her 3 foot deep in this tub. So Stephen led the police to the exact spot as to where he had buried her body, and he marked it with a little red flag. So they're going up there, there's a little red flag, and he says basically, just dig down there and you'll find her. And the police do dig, and they eventually uncover it, and it must have been such a grim sight, because as they open it, they just find her torso floating still in the acid, which is horrific. As they were there, they also found in the gravel teeth and fingernails and stuff like that he'd removed in an attempt to, you know, make sure that if she was ever found, that she couldn't be identified. They also found the tools that he'd used at the bottom of the canal. So they found his chainsaw, they found like pliers and things like that. And they found a reciprocating saw as well, which obviously he'd used to dismember a body. And it still had her hair and, you know, pieces of her inside of it, which is just horrific. So they uncover all that. Nobody really knows why he did it. Like, I don't believe he ever gave a motive as to why he killed her, but he just seemed so innocent and so, I don't know, they never even really suspected him. They later actually found out as well that the reason that he didn't fail the polygraph test was because he had been taking a drug to help to try and pass it and negate the test, so that it didn't throw off any readings that he was lying, which he was like very well prepared for all of this, and it's just disgusting. Stephen was charged for second-degree murder and he was sentenced to 35 years. Now, the police did actually say after that had they known what he'd done to her and how brutal and horrific, you know, dismembering a body and trying to burn it in all in acid, pulling out the things that could identify her and just tossing them on the ground and mixing it in with the gravel. Oh my God, it was horrific. So had they known that Stephen would now be on death row, because they would have never given him the plea deal. At the time, I guess they just wanted to get her body back and they just wanted to bring her home. And so that is why they did it. But they did say, you know, like later, they probably wouldn't have offered him that had they known, you know, in hindsight. It's honestly heartbreaking what happened to Tricia. I don't know whether he did this because whether he found out that she was getting a new boyfriend or what, I don't know. But they seem to divorce amicably. Yes, he was an aggressive man on occasion, but not enough to, you know, raise suspicions about him, because her family didn't have a clue. Those around him didn't have a clue. They thought he was such a nice and loving guy. He had been in their family for such a long time. They were married for 11 years, for God's sake. And then he just kills her. Like, they have a beautiful little girl together and he kills her. He took her away from his daughter. He stole her life, and he took his daughter's mother away. And why? For what reason? No, we don't even know. And it just breaks my heart. Faith was taken in by Jonathan. He already had a little girl and, you know, he adopted her. So they will grow up together, but one day she will learn what a monster of a father did to her mother. And then she's going to have to deal with that and live with that. And it's just awful. It really is awful. When I was researching this case, I really didn't expect that. I don't know, just the way that he was portrayed and the way he portrayed himself, to find out all the horrific things that he actually did. It's just horrific. But as well, I'm glad that Tricia wrote those things in a diary, because if she hadn't, would the truth have ever come out about Stephen? Would they have ever found out what he did to her? Because she basically helped to solve her own case, in a sense. She put the suspicion on him when there was none. There was literally none on him, because he was such a cooperative guy who seemed so genuine. It just goes to show that you never truly know someone. She was married to him for 11 years, she had a kid with him, and then he killed her. Brutally murdered her. But yeah, that's all I have on the case today. If you guys have, you know, let me know what you think about it. I was just really shocked by it. Like, I don't know, I just didn't expect it to end like that. Just horrific. Give me a big thumbs up if you've enjoyed this video and subscribe to my channel for similar content. Anyway guys, that's all I have today on the case of Tricia Todd. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye.